Hey, we'll see you May 11th in Denver, Colorado. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Okay, now you all know that I got I don't know if you know, but I got a face cancer, right
What?
here. Yeah, I didn't tell you.
It's cancer?
Yeah. So
No, you didn't tell me that.
Sounds scary, right?
Yeah, it sounds horrifying.
No, it's very scary. Turns out it's not.
Oh,
Turns out it's not. I have what they call a basal cell carcinoma.
okay.
So I'm going to tell you a scam. Dermatology is a scam. There's a big scam inside dermatology. Put it that
With
way.
a little tomato?
Say it again.
It's good with a little tomato?
Yeah.
The basal cell?
The basal cell. Yeah. And the scam now is that they've put everything under the banner of skin cancer, right? So there is a skin cancer that's deadly. It's called melanoma.
Yeah.
And you got to catch that early. If you catch it early, very high success rates. There's another kind called basal cell carcinoma, which is what most people get. Not scary at all. But they've put them both under the same banner to scare the shit out of people. And so now dermatologists went from one of the lowest paid professions to one of the highest because they've gotten everybody afraid of the sun. So when I looked into this, by the way, there's the other scam is that now private equity firms it's become so profitable to run this skin cancer scam that Wall Street private equity firms are now running dermatology centers. I just went to one, and you don't want to go to one because you don't get to see a doctor. I went in to see.
What do you see?
I went in to see a nurse assistant or a nurse. What do they call them? Nurse practitioner. And so I go in and I'm like, whoa.
Is that like a doula?
They go, because I went in for just regular seborrheic dermatitis, regular shit. And they say, this is right before I went to Europe. And they go, you're a nurse practitioner. I'll be taking care of you. I go, am I not going to see a doctor? They said, no. And I'm like, what? I had to wait 2 weeks for an appointment to see a nurse. Nothing against nurses. I love nurses.
Yeah, but that is very strange, a 2-week appointment.
So that's what they're doing now. And so that's how when
that's with insurance.
That's with insurance. So that's when Wall Street takes over healthcare. That's what you get. You don't get to see a doctor.
I'm surprised you're not self-doctoring at a kiosk. You have to like doctor yourself like at rate 8.
So no kidding. Like self-checkout at the Ralph's.
Did you use?
How many how many needles did you use to sew up that scar? So I complained. I said, hey, I'd really rather see a doctor. No offense. And they're like, all right. So they leave. And then all of a sudden the office manager comes in and says, well, we really don't have a doctor available today. So if you want to come back, I'm like, what? And we can make it. I go, hey, I didn't make this appointment. My primary physician doctor made this appointment. And I dropped her name. And I said, so I thought it was going to be with a doctor. That's not blah, 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 blah. So she leaves. The nurse practitioner comes back in. Do you want me to take care of you? I'm like, well, I want somebody just to take a look at it as long as I'm here.
Yeah.
So she takes a look at my face and she says, oh, you got to use this cream and you got to use this ointment. You got to do a special scrub on your face, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. So just as she's done, all of a sudden a doctor does walk in. And I think it's because I dropped my doctor's name and I said I was supposed to. So she comes in just to kind of like smooth it over so I don't.
There is a doctor there.
So that my doctor doesn't get in trouble. And she goes, you know what? The nurse practitioner, everything I would have did, she did. So it's no difference. And then she goes, there's no difference. And she comes over and she starts looking at my face. And she goes, oh, that looks like a basal cell carcinoma. Oh, we better get a biopsy on you. I'm like, oh, so it's not the same thing? So your nurse practitioner missed a cancer on my face? So it's not the same thing.
She missed an upsell?
So she missed an upsell. So I get this, so I start to look into it. And it turns out it's a pretty much a scam. And hear me out on this. So I found this article by Midwestern Doctor. If you haven't followed Midwestern Doctor, you should, on Substack. Unbelievable, all this stuff. This person, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, it says dermatology's disastrous war against the sun, the forgotten side of skin health, and the necessity of sunlight by the Midwestern Doctor. Okay, you ready? Hold on to your, because here it comes. There's going to be several. I'm going to have to break this up into 3 different segments, which I will do on Monday. So I'm just going to do one segment today. Skin cancers are by far the most commonly diagnosed cancer in the United States. So to prevent them, the public is constantly told, avoid the sun. You've heard that, avoid the sun, right?
Yeah.
However, while the relatively benign skin cancers are caused by sun exposure, benign skin cancers, which is what this is caused by sun exposure. The ones responsible for most skin cancer deaths are due to the lack of sunlight.
Why, lack of vitamin D or something?
This is unfortunate because sunlight is arguably the most important nutrient for the human body, as avoiding it doubles one's rate of dying and significantly increases their risk of cancer. The exact opposite. Huh, Misha? Is this not blowing your mind?
I always thought it was like how Caucasian you are versus how, I thought it was like a sliding scale.
Well, I'm telling you right here, Kurt, the important thing we need to focus on here is that, take Kurt away, is that avoiding it doubles one's rate of dying. Avoiding the sun doubles your rate of dying and significantly increases your risk of cancer.
Yeah, I believe it because when I lived in New York, you live like a vampire.
Yeah.
And everybody has a deficiency.
And now everybody's...
It's a common urban problem.
That's right.
Of a severe vitamin D deficiency.
Well, like in the 1800s, it was rickets.
Yeah, right.
And
it's like boat diseases and shit.
So a strong case can be made that this dynamic was a result of the dermatology profession, with the help of a top PR firm, rebranding themselves to skin cancer fighters, something which allowed them to become one of the highest paying medical specialties in existence. This happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
They hired a Wall Street advertising firm. Unfortunately, despite the billions that is put into fighting each year skin cancer, there has been no substantial change in the number of skin cancer deaths. None. No substantial change. So all this skin cancer awareness and all this skin and wear your sunblock. By the way, sunblock, a lot of sunblock, toxic.
Yeah, that's what
they don't tell you that either. Not good. There's two different kinds of sunblock. There's the toxic, bad kind. So I'm going to try to go through this as fast as I can because there's a lot to cover. So because of how successful the war against sunlight has been, many people are unaware of its benefits. For example, sunlight is critical for mental health. This is most well appreciated with depression. For example, consider this study of Chinese operating room nurses, which found their mental health was significantly worse than the general population, and that this decline was correlated to their lack of sunlight exposure. Okay, so that's one. Number two, a large epidemiological study found women with higher solar UVB exposure had only half the incidence of breast cancer as those with lower solar exposure, and that men with higher residential solar exposure had only half the incidence of fatal prostate cancer. A 50% reduction in either of these cancers greatly exceeds what any of the approaches we use to treat or prevent them have accomplished. The sun, for fighting cancer. 3, a 20-year prospective study evaluated 29,518 women in southern Sweden. I was just there. Oh, they're meatballs. Not kidding. Where women from each age bracket with no significant health issues were randomly selected, essentially making it one of the best possible epidemiologic studies that could be done. It found that women who were sun avoidant compared to those who had regular exposure to sunlight were 60% more likely to die. So if you avoid the sun, 60% more likely to die, being roughly 50% more likely to die than the moderate exposure group, and 130% more likely to die than the group with high sun exposure. You've been avoiding the sun, haven't you, Misha? Oh, okay. We just call her Meester.
Rick Overton said machete.
Okay. No, to be clear, there are very few interventions in medicine that do anything close to this, meaning the sun. The largest gain was seen in the risk of dying from heart disease, while the second gain was seen in the risk of all causes of death besides heart disease and cancer. And the third largest gain was seen in deaths from cancer. So it lowered your risk of death from all those things, including cancer. The investigators concluded that the smaller benefit in reduced cancer death was in part an artifact of the subjects actually living longer and hence succumbing to a type of cancer that would have only affected them later in life. So even though so what they're saying is that because they got sun, they lived so much longer that a lot of them got cancer at the end, but they would have died much earlier had they not gotten sun exposure. Do you follow that? I hope so. The largest benefit, get this, Kurt, the largest benefit was seen in smokers.
Yeah.
To the point, non-smokers who avoided the sun, non-smokers who didn't get sun, had the same risk of dying as smokers who got sunlight.
Yeah, makes sense. Because you got to figure out just your mental state. 100% getting sun, it changed your mental state.
Change your mental state.
And then it's easier to exercise, especially exercise out in the sun. And it's a radically different feeling than, and I've done both things, and the vampire lifestyle, it
not
makes your
good.
brain bad.
It's bad.
Yeah.
So according to the American Academy of Dermatology, this is what the official Dermatology Academy says about skin cancer. You ready? It says skin cancer is the most common cancer in the United States. Current estimates are that 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer. They just call it all skin cancer. Mm-hmm. So there's the kind of skin cancer that most people get, not scary at all. And then there's 1% of people die from skin cancer. That's the scary part. But they lump them together. So they're doing it here. 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer, which makes you shit your pants and get afraid of the sun.
Yeah.
It is estimated that approximately 9,500 people in the U.S. are diagnosed with skin cancer every day. But did you know that most of those skin cancers diagnosed are benign?
That's what I did think that.
Basal cell and squamous cell carcinomas, the two most common forms of skin cancer, are highly treatable if detected early and treated properly. They even put these two together, which is incorrect for them to do. Because exposure to UV light is the most preventable risk factor for all skin cancers, so they're lumping all skin cancers together. The kind of skin cancer that's caused by the sun, which is not as scary as the kind of skin cancer that is caused by not enough sun.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Which is actually very scary.
I didn't know there was one caused by not enough.
So they're doing that.
The thing I didn't realize.
The Academy of Dermatology encourages everyone to stay out of indoor tanning beds and protect their skin outdoors by seeking shade, wearing protective clothing, including a long sleeve shirt, pants, a wide brimmed hat like machete, and sunglasses with UV protection. And applying a broad spectrum water resistant sunscreen with an SPF of 30 hard to kill all skin not covered by clothing. Likewise, according to the Skin Cancer Foundation, more than 2 people die of skin cancer in the U.S. every hour. That sounds pretty scary, right? Well, let's break that down to exactly what that means. It is generally believed that around 2.64 million people get one cancer a year. Skin cancer. The 3 primary risk factors for basal cell carcinoma cancer are excessive sun exposure, fair skin, which makes you more susceptible to excessive sunlight penetrating your skin, and family history of skin cancer. So that's the kind of cancer I got. I have light skin, blue eyes, and I get a lot of sun on my face. Because of this, the widely varying incidence of basal cell carcinoma is largely due to how much sunlight exposure people have, and typically you find it in areas with frequent sunlight exposure, like on the face. Okay? The important thing to understand about basal cell carcinoma is that because it almost never metastasizes, it's not very dangerous. And most sources say that it has a 0% fatality rate. But they lump all of those cancers together, even the one that has a 0% fatality rate. Instead, it's normally evaluated by how likely it is to recur once it's removed, which ranges from 65 to 95%, depending on the source. So it comes back. The second most common type of skin cancer, cutaneous squamous cell carcinoma, looks like that. That's what it looks like. So if you get that, that's what that looks like. Since it is also caused by sunlight, so there's basal cell and then there's the how do you say that? Squamous cell? Mm-hmm. Squamous cell more serious than basal cell. An estimated 1.8 million cases occur each year in the United States. Previously, basal cell was thought to occur around 4 times as often as the squamous cell, but now that gap has closed to it only being twice as common. Unlike basal cell, squamous cell can be dangerous as it does metastasize. In turn, it is removed prior to metastasizing, and it has a 99% survival rate. But if removed after it metastasizes, this drops to 56%. A squamous cell is typically caught before this happens. They almost always catch it before it happens. The average survival rate for this cancer is around 95%. And around 2,000 people, although some estimates go as high as 8,000, are thought to die from squamous cell each year in the United States. Okay? However, despite only compromising 1% of all skin cancer diagnoses, melanoma is responsible for most of the deaths from skin cancer. That's the skin cancer you got to really be worried about, the melanoma. Since survival is greatly improved by early detection, many guides online exist to help one recognize the common signs of potential melanoma. And so you can forget that. If it looks like this, that's melanoma. If it looks like this, it's not. But if it looks like this, it is. The 5-year survival rate for melanoma depends on how far it has spread at the time of diagnosis, ranging from 99% to 35%, averaging out to a 94% survival rate, which again makes it important to correctly identify. But likewise, some cases are aggressive and metastasize quickly, so they often don't get caught in time. And those variants have between a 15 and 22.5% survival rate. So in total, this works out to a bit over 8,000 deaths each year in the United States from melanoma. What's critically important to understand about melanoma is that while it's widely considered to be linked to sunlight exposure, it's not. So the deadly kind of skin cancer, not linked to sun exposure. For example, a study of 528 patients with melanoma found that those who had solar elastosis, a common change in the skin that follows excessive sun exposure, were 60% less likely to die from melanoma. 87% of all squamous cell cases occur in regions of the body that have significant sunlight exposure, such as the face, while 82.5% of basal cells occur in those regions too. So you get basal cell and squamous cell in wherever the sun hits. Most 82% basal cell hands up on the face. Conversely, only 22% of melanomas occur in the places where you get sun. This indicates that squamous cell and basal cell are linked to sun exposure, but melanoma is not. And this is congruent with the fact that we constantly find them in areas that get almost no sunlight exposure. They keep finding melanomas in parts of your body that get no sunlight exposure. Outdoor workers, get this. I used to be an outdoor worker. I was a bricklayer for like 15 years. Outdoor workers get 3 to 10 times the annual UV dose that indoor workers get, yet they have lower incidences of cutaneous malignant melanoma and an odds ratio or a risk that is half that of their outdoor colleagues. 1997 meta-analysis of the available literature found workers with significant occupational sunlight exposure were 14% less likely to get melanoma. Existing research has found using sunscreen either has no effect on the rates of malignant melanoma or, get this, increases it. Which makes it quite frustrating that governments around the world always parrot the advice to wear more of it, especially whenever melanoma rates are rising. In other words, exactly what we also see with the COVID-19 vaccine drives.
Wasn't AOC fighting to relax sunscreen
I forgot what she was fighting. Something.
Business killing sunscreen standards.
A case can be made that the chemicals in sunscreen cause skin cancer. A case can be made that the chemicals in sunscreen cause skin cancer, and likewise, some evidence exists for this with certain cosmetic products on the market. You know, they banned in certain parts of Hawaii, you can't go swimming with sunscreen on because it kills the plant life in the. That's true. I'm going to get to that at the end of this article. There has been a significant increase in many areas from melanoma, something which argues against sunlight being the primary issue, as it has not significantly changed in the last few decades. So melanomas have been increasing, but people's sun exposure hasn't. Is what this is what this article is saying. And here it comes, the great dermatology scam. By far the most common skin cancer is not dangerous. The skin cancers you actually need to worry about are a fairly small portion of the existing skin cancers, and sunlight exposure does not cause dangerous cancers, except for squamous cell, which is nowhere near as dangerous as the others. In essence, there's no way to justify banning sunlight to prevent skin cancer, as the benefit from the prescription is vastly outweighed by its harm. However, a very clever linguistic trick bypasses this contradiction. A single label, skin cancer. So they label all this, the dangerous skin cancers and the not so dangerous skin cancer. They label them all as skin cancer to scare the shit out of you. The way more common, less threatening skin cancers and the very uncommon threatening skin cancer, melanoma, it's all called skin cancer, which then selectively adopts the lethality of melanoma, the frequency of basal cell, and the sensitivity to sunlight that basal cell and squamous cell. So they're purposely conflating. A relatively unknown blog by dermatologist David J. Alpern, MD, at last explained how this happened. How did this happen? Well, over the past 40 years, he says, I have witnessed these changes in my specialty and am dismayed by the reluctance of my colleagues to address them. This trend began in the early 1980s when the Academy of Dermatology assessed its members over $2 million to hire a prominent New York advertising agency to raise the public's appreciation of our specialty, meaning dermatology. So they hired an ad agency to get the money up. This trend began in the early, there it is. The Mad Men recommended educating the public to the fact that dermatologists are skin cancer experts, not just pimple poppers, and so the free National Skincare Cancer Screening Day was established.
Do you remember that Seinfeld episode where he was saying dermatologists aren't real doctor? And he goes, "Hey, Dr. Pimple Popper."
Oh, no kidding!
Got in a fight over it.
Oh, really? No, I don't.
Like a foot doctor was a real doctor or a dermatologist. Yeah.
So here we go. These screenings serve to inflate. So this National Skin Cancer Screening Day, these screenings serve to inflate the public's health anxiety about skin cancer, and led to the performance of vast amounts of expensive, low-value procedures for skin cancer and actinic keratosis. So they recommended me that I get a surgery for this. It's called a Mohs surgery, which is like an assembling line now. And as we'll get to it. At the same time, pathologists were expanding their definitions of what a melanoma is, leading to diagnostic drift that misleadingly increased the incidence of melanoma, while the mortality rate has remained at 1980 levels. So now they're saying way more people are getting cancer, but the mortality rate has not gone up. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Concomitantly, I like that word, non-melanoma skin cancers are being overtreated by armies of micrographic surgeons who often treat innocuous skin cancers with unnecessarily aggressive, lucrative surgeries. The trick to Mohs surgery is the surgery I was supposed to get for this thing right here. They already did a biopsy where they cut a piece of it out and they send it to a lab and they go, "Oh, yep, you got to go do a Mohs surgery," which is the specialty for this kind of cancer. The trick to Mohs surgery is that since one is both doing surgery and pathology in the same visit, it allows the doctor to bill for a variety of different things, which quite quickly adds up. So what they do is they cut out a little piece of your cancer, then they take it to a lab, which is right there, and then they treat it with the chemical. They put it underneath a microscope to see if they got all the cancer. And so that's another treatment they can bill you for. And so if they didn't get all the cancer, they had to go back and cut out a little bit more. And then they got to do the same test again to make sure they got it all. So that's what they're talking about. You're doing surgery and pathology in the same visit. And so things add up quite quickly at that. Boom. The going rate for a Mohs surgery varies widely, but it is typically at least a few $1,000s. Unlike other surgeries, most of the money goes to the dermatologist, since a hospital that provides the operating room and operating supplies or operating room staff and a recovery service doesn't take a significant amount of the reimbursement. You thus might be able to guess what happened. So what happened when all this... So when the advertising agency got involved and they started to do all these Mohs surgeries, what happened? The rate of use of Mohs surgery among Medicare beneficiaries in the United States grew 700% between 1992 and 2009. Though there was little evidence to suggest in many cases that Mohs was superior to cheaper treatment options, which include scraping, snipping, or even applications of a cream to create a chemical burn. I'm going to use a thing called Curaderm. They wanted me to get a surgery like that, and they rush you in. The big difference between these more pedestrian treatments and Mohs is the price tag, hundreds of dollars versus more than $10,000 or even $20,000 for Mohs. For most benign skin tumors, the decision to utilize Mohs micrographic surgery is likely to reflect the economic advantage to the provider rather than a substantial clinical advantage for the patient, wrote Dr. Robert Stern, a Harvard dermatologist. Noting that in 2012, America spent more than an estimated $2 billion on Mohs surgery with wide variations in its use. Even for sensitive locations like the face and hands, get this, it was used 53% of the time in Minnesota. So if you're in Minnesota and you get a basal cell carcinoma, 53% of the time they're going to give you a Mohs surgery. But if you're in New Mexico, you're only going to get it 12%. Huh? Dr. Stern estimated that nearly 2% of all Medicare recipients had a Mohs in that year. As you might guess, before long, this opportunity also attracted the attention of more unscrupulous parties seeking to cash in on the bonanza. This, in turn, led to the New York Times to investigate the industry, where they discovered... So the New York Times even caught on to this. And the New York Times did a story, and what did they report? They reported that private equity firms from Wall Street had entered the market and were buying out dermatology practices and staffing them with nurses and physician assistants who were much cheaper to hire than doctors. That's why I couldn't see a fucking doctor, because this dermatology center I went to in Pasadena was run by a private equity firm.
And they screwed up because they almost didn't try to give you the surgery.
And they almost didn't upsell me because the nurse assistant missed it.
Now you get what you pay for.
Despite advertising to the public that they would see a doctor. I thought I was going to see a doctor.
Wow, everything's like Nobody Beats the Wiz now. Like when I used to work at a bait and switch. Every level of society is a goddamn bait and switch.
So this was unfortunate, since the pseudo-dermatologist biopsied over twice. So if you go to one of these places like I did, one of these private equity-run dermatology centers, they give you a nurse's, what is it called? A nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant, and they biopsy over twice as many suspected skin cancers as actual doctors do.
Hey, it's like getting your hair cut at the student salon.
Yeah.
It's your health.
Likewise, they frequently missed actual cancers. They missed my fucking cancer. They misdiagnosed lesions. Every dermatologist could tell was not a cancer. Something which has also happened to people I know who've gone to these types of clinics, like me. To the point that in 2017, even the New York frickin' Times article actually was able to share an example of this happening.
This is going to be self-diagnosed kiosks coming where you
Yep.
take a picture of you.
Oh, you got cancer.
And then you like
And
click.
then sign us up. Sign you up for your Mohs surgery.
Yeah.
Note, many existing dermatologists have complained about this practice in their academic journals as they feel it's ruining the profession. But that has not stopped it, given how much money is on the line. And now many of them face the situation that if they try to open up their own practice in a major city, they are stuck competing with a private equity firm, which has numerous well-advertised mid-level practitioners staffing the place.
Man, that word private equity comes up every time something's working out
Something's working out.
Every time something's a resounding success, I hear private equity.
There has been a big push, for example, by greedy doctors to expand this franchise into nursing homes.
Yeah, well, give them.
For example, they covered a mobile practice in Michigan that sends clinicians to 72 nursing homes where they perform thousands of cryosurgeries along with many steroid injections and minor surgeries. What they do is they go, oh, this is precancerous to a person about to die in 5 minutes. And so they do a surgery on them. The investigation, in turn, found that 75% of those patients had Alzheimer's disease and most of their skin lesions were inconsequential.
Oh, that's who you really get your upsell.
Yeah. Furthermore, they cited a healthcare analytics firm that looked at 17,820 done on patients over 65 in the last year of life, and found that skin biopsies and the freezing of precancerous lesions were performed frequently, often weeks before death.
Well, you might as well make them productive. You might as well get something out of them, right?
So here's
medicine.
Here's a melanoma statistics for the National Cancer Institute. This one down here, the death rate. This is how many times it's being. So the diagnosis is going up. Death rate, almost exactly the same.
Well, thank God they didn't do the vaccines this way. You know,
I know.
It was just some bullshit to push it on you. Like, thank God they really took their time with that one.
No, there are beginning to be pushes to stop the use of more so I'm going to cover this part more on Monday, but I just want to let you know, this is a teaser for Monday. There are now beginning to be pushes to stop the use of more toxic sunscreens in areas with abundant aquatic life because they poison coral reefs. What does the sunscreen? This raises the point that if a small amount of sunscreen diluted in the water is too toxic for an ecosystem to handle, why would you want to put it on your skin where it can be directly absorbed into your body at its full concentration? So, boy, getting a basal cell, going to the dermatologist for regular dermatitis, I went to one of these Wall Street run, private equity run dermatology centers where you don't get to see a doctor. I only got to see a doctor because I put my foot down, and then the doctor come in and oh my God, you got cancer. It was almost hilarious, Kurt. It was almost hilarious because she had just got done giving me a speech. See, I would have done exactly everything. I would have prescribed the same things. I would have done the same. So she's trying to make sure that I'll keep coming back there and being taken care of by someone who's not a doctor.
It sounded, you know what it sounded
and then
like?
she goes, and then she just goes, I would have done the same thing. I would have given, because look, and she comes over and she starts, that looks like a basal cell. I go, you mean cancer? Yeah.
Would her eyes go cha-ching?
I go, so apparently, oh, good thing I came. Yeah.
Like, good thing she came out and stopped pretending not to be in the office.
Yeah.
Or she'd have missed that.
She'd have missed that. But I canceled the Mohs surgery after I read this article.
Well,
I was all scheduled to go get a Mohs surgery right here on my frickin' face. A surgery where they slice you open, sew you back up, and maybe slice you open a couple of times.
Dude, okay, veterinarians. Here's like the most unscrupulous doctors I've seen over the course of my life. Veterinarians, I've seen, it's like robbery. Chiropractors, the one I went to a Beverly Center. This is like cancer shit, so it's weird. It sounds like you went to a bad chiropractor where they want you in like a package deal for like a huge amount of money.
Yeah. You're gonna need 10 treatments.
Yeah, and I remember I was like, I had a mask on too. I just couldn't believe what this lady was saying. She hadn't done anything to me. Like, I couldn't walk. It's just sciatica. That Overton's guy fixed me for like $40.
So now you know the rest of the story. Pretty surprising. Was it surprising?
Yes.
Misha, how surprised are you by this, Miss Hat Wearer?
Yeah. You're like, what's his name in the island of Dr. Moreau, the Godfather, remember? We had all that sunblock on.
Yes. Hey, come see us do a live show. We're going to be in Denver, Colorado, May 11th, Los Angeles, California, doing a live panel show with a celebrity panel and video. Ashland, Virginia, Athens, Georgia, Rutherford, New Jersey, with Max Blumenthal, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Ontario, California, Irvine, California, Chicago, Illinois, with another celebrity panel, live video show in Chicago, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.